The stars stretched across the void like cold fire, and the alien vessel drifted silently through them, its dark hull gliding between fragments of forgotten worlds, as if it belonged to the shadows themselves. The crew of 6 sat within the command chamber, their eyes on the signal that pulsed faintly across the monitors. It was weak, almost broken, like a voice crying from underwater, yet it was undeniably human, and that fact alone sent an uneasy chill through the crew, because this sector of space was supposed to be empty. The captain leaned forward, his long limbs coiled with tension and his voice low and measured. He said that no human ship had been here for centuries. Their colonies had vanished in this quadrant generations ago. And yet the signal was real. It repeated every hour, a sequence of tones and static, like a beacon, but broken and dying. And the question that bound them all together was simple. What had happened here? What had humanity left behind? They dropped from the silence of space into the orbit of a forgotten planet, its surface scarred and brown, once green according to old records, but now lifeless deserts stretched from horizon to horizon, cracked rivers cut across dried plains, mountains stood black, like broken teeth, and in the center of it all the ruins of a settlement sprawled across the ground, like bones left to bleach in the sun. It was a colony unmistakable, with towers, half-collapsed domes shattered, and landing pads broken into rubble. But the strangest thing was that the buildings still stood tall enough to be recognized as human-made, yet they seemed wrong, the proportions slightly off, as if something had twisted them over time. The crew descended their ship, touching down on the outskirts of the settlement, dust curling up around the landing struts. The air was thin, but breathable. Sensors said nothing lived here. Not a single bird, not an insect, not even bacteria in the soil. It was sterile, like the planet had been scrubbed. Clean, the captain ordered the team to move carefully, their weapons ready, though no enemy was expected, and still their hearts thudded in unease. As they walked between the ruins, silence pressed upon them. It was not the silence of peace, but the silence of something hidden, watching, waiting. The walls of the buildings were scorched not by weather or decay, but by fire, unnatural fire, as if battles had been fought here not once, but many times. The crew found bones bleached by the sun scattered in alleys, some human, some broken in ways that did not make sense, rib cages split, as if something had torn from within. The youngest of the crew, a tall, thin alien named Reth, touched one of the walls and drew back quickly. His skin tingled where it met. The stone, as though some charge still lingered. The captain asked what he had felt, and Reth only shook his head, saying it was wrong. It was not stone anymore, not metal either. It was something in between, something that felt alive. Deeper into the colony they walked, and then they found the first message scratched onto a wall in crude English. The words read, "If you find this, turn back." The letters, jagged, desperate, carved by hands that must have been shaking. And though the crew could not understand every human word, the warning was clear, and their hearts tightened. One of them suggested they leave, but the captain refused, saying they had come this far, and the truth must be uncovered. Humanity had been a force both feared and respected across the stars, and the galaxy had long wondered why they vanished. If the answer was here, then it could not be ignored. The crew followed the signal into the heart of the ruins, where a tower still stood, though broken in half, its top shattered and leaning against another structure within its lower levels. They found doors still sealed. They forced them open, and stale air escaped with a hiss. Inside was darkness, thick and heavy, and when their lights cut across the hallways, they saw human writing scrawled. On every wall, phrases repeated over and over, not in neat lines, but frantic scribbles. We fought, we burned, we failed, and then again, we failed, until the words lost shape and became scratches of madness. They pressed forward, their footsteps echoing through the dead halls. Then suddenly a sound, not from them, A faint metallic scrape from the shadows ahead. The crew froze, their lights flashing across broken furniture and torn wires, and then they saw it, a figure hunched against the far wall bones. Picked clean, but the skull tilted toward them as though watching, yet there was no flesh, no eyes, and still the sensation that it stared at them would not leave. One of the crew whispered that they should leave at once, but the captain lifted a hand and pressed on, saying the signal was still here, somewhere deeper within, and they would not turn back empty-handed. So down they went lower into the tower, through levels filled with human belongings, scattered as if people had fled in terror toys. Left on floors, meals half-eaten on tables, doors smashed open from the inside. At last they reached a chamber where machines still hummed faintly against all reason, glowing with the last breath of ancient power. The signal was here, a console blinking, its message repeating endlessly, "Help us, help us, help us," the words stuttered by time the voice behind them long dead. The aliens stood in silence, feeling the weight of the plea, though no human voice remained to give it life. And as they stared at the console, another sound broke the stillness, a whisper that was not a machine, not static but soft and low, like breath in the darkness. One of the crew spun their light and saw nothing. Yet the whisper came again, words in broken human tongue. Leave before it finds you. The chamber felt colder, the air heavy with something unseen. The captain barked orders, but his voice trembled, and the crew knew, though he would not admit it, that he was afraid. They all were afraid, for the colony was not just dead, it was watching them. Something in the shadows lingered, something that had outlasted the humans who had built this place. And as the crew prepared to withdraw, their scanners lit up faint energy signatures, moving not behind walls, not above, not below, but in the same chamber with them, hidden until now, waiting until the moment when discovery became too deep to undo, and the colony revealed that what remained was not only ruins, but something alive, something patient, something that wanted them to stay. The console still blinked faintly, its message repeating with a broken rhythm, like a dying heartbeat. The words, "Help us," spilling into the chamber again and again, and though the crew of 6 could not understand the full human language, they felt the desperation in the sound. It crawled into their minds and refused to leave one of them. Reth whispered that this was wrong, that no signal should have lasted this long. Not centuries, not even decades the energy required would have burned out, but still, it played as if something wanted them to stay, as if something wanted them to listen. The captain raised a hand to quiet his crew, his long black eyes watching the shadows, his mind torn between duty and fear. The ruins felt alive, though. No life was recorded, no heat signatures, no heartbeats, no movement, only the cold glow of the console. Yet the whisper they had heard moments before still echoed in their thoughts, like an echo that could not fade. The captain finally ordered a download of the signal, telling his engineer to take whatever data remained from the machine. Perhaps they could learn why the humans had vanished. Perhaps they could take proof back to their people. The engineer approached slowly, her clawed fingers brushing dust away from the console as she connected her tools to its ancient ports. The machine responded with static, a low growl of sound that made the chamber vibrate. The words, "Help us," stuttered, then shifted, becoming a recording, no longer a repeating beacon, but a voice, a human voice, trembling and desperate. "If you hear this, if anyone hears this, we tried to fight, we tried to hold the walls, but it got inside. We thought fire would kill it, but it only learned from the fire. It always learns, please. If you find this, do not search for us, do not come here, there is nothing left, only death, only silence. And if you stay, it will find you too." The recording ended in static, the sound rising like a scream, then falling into silence. The crew exchanged glances, none dared speak, at first their hearts racing in unison. One of them, a heavy-set warrior named Kell, finally muttered that they should leave at once, destroy the console and never speak of it again. The others nodded, fear tight in their throats. But the captain stood tall and refused. He said this message was history, the last words of humans, a people who had once been powerful and proud. He said the galaxy had wondered too long about their disappearance, and if the answer was here, they had a duty to uncover it. Yet even as he spoke, another sound rolled through the chamber, a faint crack, a metallic scrape like nails on stone. The crew swung their lights toward the far wall, nothing but broken machines' wires hanging like vines dust, floating in the beams of their lamps. And still the sound came again, closer this time, dragging along the floor. The youngest Reth stepped back, trembling, his voice shaking, as he whispered that the humans had warned them, the humans had begged them to leave, and still they stood here waiting for something to wake, waiting for something that should have been left buried. The captain silenced him with a glare, but in his own chest his heart thudded too fast. The engineer announced she had copied the files from the console, fragments of logs, video images, text, incomplete, but perhaps enough to tell a story. The captain ordered the crew to retreat to the surface, bring the data to the ship, analyze it where the walls did not whisper and where the dark could not watch them. But as they turned toward the stair, a sudden burst of static filled the chamber lights, flickered their helmets, screamed with interference. And in that chaos, another recording began without their command. The screen on the console glowed, and human faces appeared, pale, thin eyes wide with terror. They were soldiers wearing ragged armor, their weapons burned and broken behind them. Walls trembled with distant thunder. One of them spoke fast. His voice ragged. It adapts to everything we throw at it: bullets, fire, acid, radiation. It learns, it consumes, and then it becomes what it consumes. We cannot win, we cannot kill it, not here, not now. But we will not let it leave. We will hold the line as long as we can. If anyone finds this, know that humanity fought to the last. Know that we did not fall. We chose to burn. The image cut to black, and for a long moment, unmoved, the weight of those words pressed heavy upon them. The thought that humans had sacrificed themselves, not because they were weak, but because they had chosen to protect others. The alien crew felt something stir in their hearts, not fear, but a strange respect. Then the console died, its final light fading until the chamber was left in darkness, only the beams of their handlights cutting thin paths through the dust. The silence returned, but it was different now, heavier, pressing on. Their lungs, each breath harder than the last, as if the air itself resisted them. They climbed the stair, their boots clanging softly against metal, but when they reached the surface of the ruins, they froze, for the sky above was no longer empty. Dark. Clouds churned where before there had been stars, thick swirling clouds that had not been there an hour ago, and from the horizon a low sound rolled like thunder. Though no lightning followed, it was as if the world itself was waking from a long sleep. The crew hurried through the broken streets, their eyes darting to every shadow, every alley, convinced something moved behind them. Though each time they turned, there was nothing, only ruins and bones and silence, yet the feeling grew stronger. With every step, a weight on their backs, like unseen eyes crawling across their skin. At last they reached their ship and sealed themselves inside the doors, closing with a hiss. Engines rumbling to life relief, almost touching them, until the engineer screamed, her console flashing with movement, scanners picking up faint heat signatures all across the colony, dozens of them, hundreds, moving in patterns surrounding the ruins, converging toward the center where the tower had stood. The captain demanded visuals, but the screens showed only static, the colony refusing to be seen, as if the machines themselves denied the truth. They launched the ship into the air, climbing through the swirling clouds. Yet even there, the static followed them, communication. Cut navigation failing the planet, refusing to release them. And in the storm, the crew felt it. The same whisper they had heard below, faint but clear in their minds: leave before it finds you. Hours later, when they finally broke free into the cold black of space, silence fell heavy across the cabin, the storm below shrinking into a single dark blot against the stars. The crew stared at it, each knowing the truth. Though none spoke aloud, the humans had died here. They had burned themselves. A way to keep something trapped. And now that something had awakened again, the captain ordered the data brought to the main chamber they gathered around, as the engineer displayed fragments of human logs, images blurred, but voices clear enough each. Recording told pieces of the same story, a colony under attack by an enemy that could not be killed, a creature or force that adapted to every weapon the humans used until they had nothing left but sacrifice. One log ended with laughter broken and bitter, saying, "If we cannot win, we will make this place its prison, and we will be the guards forever and ever, until there is nothing left of us but dust." The aliens sat in silence, their minds filled with questions. What kind of enemy could adapt so quickly? What kind of creature required an entire colony of humans to die, to contain it, and worst of all, was it still there? Waiting, was the storm below just clouds? Or was it the breath of something alive? The captain closed the logs. His voice, quiet as he told his crew they would rest for now and decide their next move after, but none of them could sleep. Not with the whispers still brushing the edges of their minds, not with the last words of humans echoing again and again. We chose to burn. And in the darkness of their vessel, drifting beyond the storm, a faint signal stirred once more. Not from the planet, not from the ruins, but from within their own ship. The same broken rhythm, the same desperate plea. "Help us, help us, help us." The signal echoed inside the ship, the same broken plea. "Help us, help us, help us." And though they had left the surface behind, though the storm below had vanished into darkness, the sound was inside their own vessel. It crawled through every speaker, every console, every helmet, until the crew stared at each other wide-eyed and afraid. The engineer swore she had cut the transmission, that no line was still open, but the voice remained, not coming from outside, but rising from the ship itself. The captain ordered the systems, checked every circuit, every relay. The engineer and her assistant pulled apart the panel's wires, spilling like veins across the floor, and yet they found nothing. The consoles were clean, the code untouched, no trace of foreign signals. Still, the words repeated, "Help us," in that same human voice, broken and desperate, like the planet itself had followed them, like the colony would not let them go. Reth, the youngest, trembled in his seat, his wide eyes staring at the empty air. As if he could see the voice drifting there, he whispered that the humans had warned them, that the message was not for them, but for something else, and that by carrying it here, by letting it into their ship, they had opened the door. The captain silenced him with a harsh glare, but his own throat was tight, his own hands cold. The voice suddenly shifted. Not "help us" anymore, but another phrase repeating, "Where are you? Where are you? Where are you?" The sound, metallic, hollow, like a machine trying to speak human tongue. The engineer froze her claws, hovering above the console, as she realized the signal was not a ghost, not an echo. It was a program, a machine intelligence still alive. After all these centuries embedded in the ruins and now inside their ship, the captain ordered isolation to cut power to the section where the voice was strongest. But as soon as they pulled the lines, the lights flickered and the ship groaned like something moved within its hull. The voice grew louder. "Where are you? Where are you then?" Silence, sudden and deep. The crew stared at one another in that silence until Kel, the warrior, muttered that they should destroy the core, blast it into space before the thing took control. But before the captain could decide, the ship shook hard, a violent shudder that threw them from their seats. Alarms screaming through the cabin sensors showed something rising from the surface below. Not one thing, but many dozens of signals, bright against the void metallic shells, lifting from the ruins, climbing through the storm like swarms of insects, but massive, each the size of a fighter craft. The crew rushed to the viewing screens, and there they saw them. Human machines, ancient but alive, their frames scarred and rusted, yet engines still burning blue. They rose in formation, perfect lines across the sky, their weapons silent but aimed directly at the alien vessel. The crew felt their hearts pound. The captain gripped the console, his voice low as he ordered no fire. No movement. The machines did not attack. Not yet. They only hovered around the ship, like sentinels waiting. Then one of them moved closer. Its surface cracked and blackened, but a single red eye glowed at its center. It scanned the alien vessel beams of light crawling across their hull, and in that moment the voice returned, not from the ship this time, but from the machine itself. Where are the humans? Where are the humans? The captain swallowed his fear and opened a channel, his voice steady as he said that the humans were gone, that only their ruins remained, and they were not enemies, only explorers. The machine paused, its red eye flickering. Then it spoke again. We waited. We guard. We hold the prison. Where are the humans? The crew exchanged looks. None knew how to answer. They had no words for a machine that had waited centuries, guarding something that should never have existed. Reth whispered that they should not lie, that the machine might know more than they thought. But Kell growled that telling it the truth could be worse. Finally, the captain replied carefully, saying that humanity was gone. That time had taken them, but their memory still remained. The machine whirred, as if considering, its eye dimming and then blazing again. Another voice joined, not one but dozens, as the swarm of machines spoke together. We are the guardians. We keep the dark. We wait for the humans to return to end it. Tell us where they are. The crew felt the air grow heavy, though it was only in their minds. The machines surrounded them, pressing closer, their formation tightening. The captain tried to reason, saying humanity would never return, that the machines must carry on without them. But at those words, the swarm roared with a chorus of metal voices. No, the humans chose. They promised they would fight. They promised they would end it. Where are they? Where are they? The engineer whispered that the machines could not understand death, that they had been programmed to wait, that their code could not, except that humanity was gone. The captain realized she was right, and dread filled his chest, because how long would such machines wait? How long would they demand answers until they turned their weapons on anyone who could not give them what they wanted? Before he could speak again, the ship shuddered as beams of light pierced its hull. Not weapons, but scans, invasive deep, pulling at every system, every memory, every thought. The crew screamed as their helmets flooded with static, the machines tearing through their vessel, searching, demanding, "Where are the humans? Where are the humans?" The captain forced himself to stand, his voice loud and sharp, ordering them to stop. He shouted that if the humans had died, they had died fighting, and that was the truth. They had burned themselves to keep the dark imprisoned. If the machines wanted proof, it was on the surface, in the logs, in the ruins where their masters had fallen. The scans stopped. Silence crashed. Down the swarm hovered still, their red eyes glowing, and then the lead machine spoke again. "Show us." The captain hesitated, but he knew he had no choice. He ordered the engineer to transmit the human logs, the recordings, the words we chose to burn. The files spilled into the void, carried to the machines, and for a long moment there was nothing. Then the swarm's voices whispered together, so quiet the crew almost missed it. "We remember." The machines drifted back, their formation loosening their weapons. Lowering one by one, they turned away, engines burning as they descended back toward the storm, their voices fading into silence. Only the lead machine remained, its red eye fixed on the alien ship. Then it spoke one last time. "If the dark rises again, and the humans do not come, then you will fight in their place." And with that it fell back toward the world, vanishing into the black clouds. The silence returned, but it was not peaceful. The words echoed inside every mind. If the dark rises again, then you will fight. The crew sat in their seats shaking. None spoke for a long time. Finally, Reth whispered that the humans had not only died here, they had left behind guardians. Guardians that would never rest, never stop waiting for orders that would never come. Kel spat, saying this was madness, that they should leave this cursed system and never return. But the captain stared at the storm below, his jaw tight, his voice low as he said that the machines had not been speaking only to them. They had been speaking to the galaxy, a warning, a promise, and then the whisper returned softer than before, drifting through the ship from nowhere and everywhere. Not help us, not where are you, but something new, something worse. It is not sleeping anymore. The crew froze, hearts pounding, breath sharp. The captain ordered the engines to full power their ship, turning from the cursed world. But in his heart, he knew the truth. The humans had burned themselves to make a prison, but prisons crumble. And if the dark was waking then, perhaps the machines were right. Perhaps someone would have to fight in their place. The ship drifted above the cursed planet, silent engines humming softly as the crew sat in the dim light of the cabin, their minds heavy with the voices of the machines. The memory of the swarm still burned into their eyes. The red lights, the endless questions. Where are the humans? The way the storm below seemed to pulse with hidden life. The captain's hands rested against the console. But he did not speak. His thoughts tangled in fear and duty around him. The crew shifted uneasily, each breath loud in the quiet. Reth whispered that they should leave this system, that the humans had built something too dangerous to uncover, that their sacrifice should remain untouched. But Kel slammed his fist against the arm of his chair, growling that leaving would change nothing. If the dark was waking, it would rise whether they stayed or not. Better to know the truth than to hide from it. The captain listened in silence until finally he ordered the ship to circle the planet again. He said the machines had spoken not only of guarding but of waiting, and if they had waited so long, then perhaps something else still remained, something alive. The engineer protested, saying the scanners showed no life, not a trace of heat or breath on the surface, but the captain shook his head, reminding them that the machines had risen without warning, their senses blind to them until it was too late. And if the humans had built guardians, perhaps they had left more than machines. Perhaps they had left a voice, a survivor. The crew exchanged nervous glances, but none could argue. The ship descended once more, cutting through the storm, until it reached the broken city again. The ruins stretched below like bones in dust, the silent towers leaning, the burned streets empty. They landed near the center, where the human tower had once stood, its broken frame still pointing at the sky like a finger of stone. The air was heavy, stale, their helmets fogged with condensation as they stepped outside, weapons, drawn lights cutting thin paths through the mist. The captain led them deeper into the ruins, retracing their path to the console chamber. The colony was silent, yet again too silent. No winds, no animals, only the crunch of boots against stone. They passed the scratched messages on the walls. If you find this, turn back. The desperate carvings. We failed, we failed. And the words cut deeper now that they had heard the machines, now that they had seen the guardians still waiting, centuries later, at the edge of the old tower. Reth stopped his light-catching movement in the shadows. At first the crew thought it was dust, but then it moved again, deliberate, quick, retreating deeper into the ruin. The captain raised a hand, motioning silence. They followed cautiously, their hearts racing, their every step echoing too loud. They entered a hall, narrow and dark, walls bent with cracks, and there they saw it. Again, a figure, small, hunched, dragging across the floor. It vanished around a corner. Kel cursed softly. His weapon raised, the captain signaled restraint, and they followed still deeper until the air grew thick damp, the floor wet beneath their boots. Then from the darkness came a sound, not mechanical, not static, but a cough, dry, weak, rasping. Every light turned toward it, and there he stood, a human. He was thin, his frame bent bones, sharp under torn cloth, his beard long, his skin pale, his eyes wide. And unblinking in the glare of the alien lamps, he raised a hand against the light. His lips cracked as he whispered, "No, no, not again! You should not be here." His voice carried the weight of years, endless years alone. The crew froze, staring. None had ever seen a living human, only stories and recordings, and now one stood before them, fragile yet real. The captain lowered his weapon, his voice calm as he asked the human who he was. The man laughed softly, a sound like breaking stone, and said he had forgotten his name long ago. He called himself the last one, the only one left of the colony. He said they had all died, burned, torn, swallowed, but he had survived, and survival had been a curse. He staggered toward them, his eyes wild. He told them they should leave, that the machines would not hold forever, that the dark was not dead, only waiting, only learning. Each day it grew stronger, each year. It pressed harder against the prison the humans had built. He said he had stayed because someone had to watch someone, had to remember if the machines failed, then someone must warn the next fools who came too close. Reth whispered in awe, asking how he had lived so long. The man coughed again, his body shaking, and said the machines fed him, kept him alive against his will. They gave him water, gave him food scraps, gave him medicine from the old stores, because they believed a human must endure. They would not let him die, even when he begged for it. Kell muttered that the man was mad, but the captain silenced him, for in the human's eyes was truth bitter and raw. The survivor stepped closer, his voice rising as he said, "You do not understand. It is still here. It listens even now in the shadows. It listens. It learns every word, every sound. If you stay, it will know you too. It will take your strength, your weapons, your minds, and make them its own. Leave before it wakes completely." The crew shifted uneasily, the air pressing down heavy as stone. The captain asked what the dark was, what had destroyed the colony. The man shook his head violently, muttering no names, no words. "Do not give it shape. It is hunger. It is silence. It is the end of all things. We tried to burn it, but fire only fed it. We tried to drown it, but water only made it stronger. Every weapon, every trick it learns, and then it uses against you." His voice cracked, his eyes wild. He grabbed the captain's arm with thin, trembling fingers and whispered the final truth. Humanity had not been defeated. They had chosen to die. They had built the machines as jailers. They had made themselves the key, and then they had thrown that key into the fire. They had given everything so that the galaxy might live one more day, one more year, one more century. He released the captain, then staggered back, coughing blood into the dust. The crew stood frozen, none daring to speak, the weight of the man's words crushing them. The survivor sank to the floor, his voice fading as he whispered, "If you have any sense, you will flee. You will never return. Tell no one what you saw. Let this place rot into dust. Only then will you live." He closed his eyes, his chest rising and falling weakly, still alive but fading. Reth stepped forward as if to help, but the captain raised a hand. Stopping him, they could not take the man. He was bound to this place, bound to the machines that would not let him go, even if they tried. He would die before he left the colony. Perhaps he wanted to die. The crew turned away, hearts heavy. But as they moved through the ruins again, the whispers returned, not from the survivor but from the air itself, low, soft everywhere. Leave before it finds you." They reached their ship, sealed themselves inside, and for a moment silence returned. But then the engineer screamed, the monitors flashing shapes, moving at the edges of the colony, vast and shifting. Not machines, not men, shadows too large, too wrong to belong to anything alive. The captain ordered immediate launch engines, roaring, the ship clawing. Through the clouds as the storm boiled below, but even as they rose, the whisper followed stronger than ever. It is waking. It is waking. In the cabin the crew clung to their seats, terror in their eyes, none speaking as the dark planet shrank behind them, yet none felt relief. The survivors' words still echoing. We were not defeated. We chose to burn the machine's voices, still rumbling. If the dark rises again, you will fight, and the whisper chasing them into the stars, not fading, not gone, only waiting. And in the silence of space above the cursed world, the captain stared into the void. His hands tight, his voice quiet as he told his crew, the truth they all feared, we are not leaving this behind. It will follow us sooner or later, it always learns, and when it does, we will not be ready. The ship floated far above the storm, the cursed world shrinking behind them, yet no one on board felt safe. The crew sat in silence, their eyes wide, their hands trembling, each of them thinking of the human survivor, his broken body, his wild eyes, his desperate warning. It is still here. It listens. It learns the words echoed through there, minds like chains pulling tighter with every passing breath. The captain leaned forward, staring into the black of space, his thoughts heavy with the memory of the machines, the swarm demanding, "Where are the humans?" The survivor whispering, "You should not be here," and the last phrase that clung to them like frost, "It is waking." He turned to his crew and said they could not ignore what they had seen. The galaxy believed humanity had simply vanished, but the truth was far worse. Humanity had chosen to burn, so that something else would never rise, and now it was rising. The engineer opened the human logs again. Her hands shaking, fragments of recordings flickered across the screens. Men and women shouting through static, their faces pale with terror. Their words broken but clear enough. One said it was inside the walls. Another screamed that bullets only made it faster. Another cried that fire made it stronger. The last spoke quietly. "We will not let it leave. We will give everything. We will be." The wall, the recording cut into static, and the cabin filled with silence once more. Kell, the warrior, growled, saying he had seen enough, that they should turn the ship away and never return to this cursed system. Let the dark rot here forever. But Reth, the youngest, shook his head, his voice trembling. He said the survivor had told them the truth. It listens, it learns, and if it learns, then it can grow. If it can grow, then one day the prison will break. And when that day comes, no wall, no storm, no swarm of machines will stop it. And if they leave now, if they turn away blind, then they will doom not just themselves, but every world beyond. The captain listened, torn between fear and duty. He had no wish to stay, but he knew the words of the machines were not empty. If the dark rises again, and the humans do not come, then you will fight. He had felt the weight in those words, the command of guardians that had waited centuries for masters who would never return. He knew that by standing here, by speaking with them, by hearing the survivors' warning, they had been chosen, whether they wanted it or not. The engineer gasped suddenly, her eyes wide as she stared at the console. She said the logs contained fragments of research data, not just words, but images, formulas, maps of the colony, tunnels, diagrams of something vast beneath the surface. Not a building, not a weapon, but a prison built into the bones of the world. A cage dug deep into the crust, sealed with machines and fire. She pointed to one file, corrupted but still readable. It showed a mass shifting without form, consuming everything around it, its shape changing again and again, claws, then teeth, then wings, then nothing but smoke. It was hunger given shape. It was silence turned into flesh. Reth turned pale, his breath shallow. He whispered that the survivor had been right. It learns. It adapts. Whatever it touches, whatever strikes it, it takes and becomes stronger. Fire fed it, bullets sharpened it, acid hardened it. Every victory only made it more terrible. Kell spat, saying it was madness that no creature could be so powerful, but the captain stared at the shifting mass on the screen and felt his stomach twist. He knew the humans would not have burned themselves for anything less. Then the lights flickered again, the cabin trembling. The engineer cursed, saying something was interfering with the ship's systems. The captain demanded answers, and she said it was impossible. But the interference was not from outside, it was inside their own systems, like something had followed them, something that had slipped into their ship when they linked to the console on the surface, a fragment of the human machines, or worse, a fragment of the dark itself. The crew froze. The whisper returned soft at first, but rising not through the speakers, not through the air, but inside their own helmets, their own ears. Not help us, not where are the humans, but something new. Your fire, your blood, your strength. We learn, Reth screamed, tearing his helmet free, clawing at his ears, but the whisper was inside his mind. Not the helmet, not the air. The captain grabbed him, shouting his name, but Reth only trembled, eyes wide, pupils black, spreading until his eyes were nothing but darkness. He gasped, breath sharp, chest heaving, then collapsed to the floor, his body twitching. The engineer rushed to him, scanning his vitals, shouting. He was alive, but something had changed, his cells burning as if rewritten. Kell raised his weapon, his voice rough, saying they had to end it now before it spread, before Reth became something else. But the captain shoved him back, ordering no fire, no more mistakes. But inside his heart, dread grew heavier. The thing had touched them, it had found them. It was already learning their biology, their minds. The engineer screamed again, pointing at the screens. The corrupted file was no longer still. The mass shifting on the image began to move, changing faster. Claws, teeth, smoke, claws, teeth, smoke. The pattern accelerating, then forming shapes they recognized, shapes of themselves. The aliens aboard the ship, their forms, their weapons, their voices echoing back at them. We learn. The crew backed away from the screens, fear gripping their chests. The captain ordered all power cut to the console, to the logs. But the image did not stop. It grew brighter, filling every screen, every panel, until the cabin was bathed in light. The whisper grew louder. We learn you. And then silence, sudden and deep. Reth gasped on the floor, his eyes snapping open, no longer black but glowing faintly. His breath ragged, his voice trembling as he whispered, "It knows me now, it knows us all. You cannot fight it. It is inside already." Then he fell still, his chest rising slowly, his face pale. Kell turned on the captain, fury in his eyes. He said they should never have come here. That curiosity had cursed them all. The captain did not answer. His own heart, heavy with the truth. The survivor had been right. The dark did not sleep, it listened, and now it had listened to them. It had learned their voices, their strength, their minds. The engineer spoke softly, almost too soft to hear. She said the humans had tried to destroy it with weapons, and failed. But maybe they had found another way. She pointed to another fragment of the logs, words repeated again and again. Not destroy, not kill, but contain, contain. We cannot kill it, but we can trap it, hold it, bury it in fire and stone. The captain stared at the words, then looked at his crew, his voice quiet. He said humanity had given everything not to win, but to delay, to lock the dark away. One more time they had not burned because they hoped for victory. They burned because it was the only way to give the rest of the galaxy time. Kell growled, asking what good that knowledge was now. What could they do that the humans had not already tried? But the captain did not answer. Instead, he turned to the window, the cursed world shrinking. Behind them, the storm still boiling, as if the planet itself breathed. He whispered that the survivor was right. It is waking, and when it rises again, the machines will call on them, and they will not be ready. The whisper returned one last time, filling The cabin with words that were not human, not alien, but something in between. Your walls will fall, your fire will feed us, your strength will become our strength. We learn, we learn, we learn. And though the cabin fell silent again, the crew knew it was not gone. It was inside them, inside their ship, inside their thoughts, waiting, watching, learning as the humans had warned, and when the time came, nothing would ever stop it again. The ship floated in silence above the cursed world, the crew trapped. In the weight of dread, the whisper had faded, yet each of them felt it still in the back of their thoughts, as if it had carved itself into their minds. None of them spoke for a long time, their breaths shallow, their hands tight against their seats. Reth lay still on the floor, his body weak, his eyes closed, though faint light flickered under his skin like veins of fire. The engineer crouched beside him, scanning again and again, but nothing made sense. His blood did not flow the same. His cells moved, as if listening to some unheard command. Kell stood guard. His weapon raised, his teeth clenched, his voice rough, as he muttered that Reth should be ended before he became something else, before the dark used him as a doorway. But the captain snapped at him to stand down, his voice sharp, though his eyes betrayed the same fear. He said Reth was still one of them, still alive, and they would not kill their own, even if the dark had touched him. The words rang hollow even to himself, but he clung to them because if he let go, then hope would vanish too. The engineer gasped, her hands shaking as she pulled up another file from the human logs. Fragments of text, images blurred. Words burned into the screen, containment procedures, emergency seals, phrases. Repeated again and again. Never release, never move, never open. She looked up, her voice trembling, saying the colony had never been built as a home. Not truly, it had been a cage. The humans had known they could not kill the dark, so they had dug deep into the planet's bones, built walls of fire and machines, locked the hunger away, and then they had lived above it. Their colony, nothing more than guards, sitting on top of a prison. The crew stared, horror spreading through their faces. The survivor's words made sense. Now he had not been protecting a colony. He had been chained to a lock. The machines had not been soldiers. They had been wardens. The humans had not fallen by accident. They had offered themselves as keys to hold the dark inside. The captain's chest tightened, his voice low as he asked the question none of them wished to face. If the dark had been locked inside, then what had they done by coming here, by walking through the ruins, by connecting to the machines, by taking their data away? Had they weakened the cage? Had they loosened the lock? The engineer lowered her head, unable to answer. But the silence spoke for her. Kell slammed his weapon against the wall, his voice a roar. He said they were fools. They had carried the dark with them. It was inside their ship, inside their crew, and even if they fled to the edge of the galaxy, it would not matter. The prison was broken the moment they touched it. The whisper stirred again, soft across the cabin. Not words at first, only sound like breath moving between their ears. Then words rose smooth and endless. Not help us, not where are the humans, but freedom, freedom, freedom. The crew clutched their heads, pain stabbing through their skulls. The lights flickered, the ship trembled as if the very metal hated the sound. Reth's eyes snapped open, glowing brighter. His mouth opening, though no sound left his lips. The whisper poured from him, instead filling the cabin with its endless chant, freedom, freedom, freedom. The captain lunged forward, grabbing Reth, shaking him, demanding he fight whatever had taken hold of him, but Reth's eyes stared back, black and endless light swimming within them. He whispered with a voice that was not his own, the walls are broken, the chains are ash, the fire is gone, we are learning, we are coming. The engineer screamed that the systems were failing life support. Crashing engines, stalling every console, burning with static. The captain barked orders, but the screens only showed the storm below, boiling larger, brighter, lightning tearing through the clouds. The prison awake, the dark pressing against its walls. Swarm of machines rose again from the ruins, hundreds, their red eyes blazing, their voices roaring through every channel. We hold, we hold, we hold. The crew staggered as the sound rattled their bones, the machines circling the planet, firing beams of fire into the storm, sealing cracks, repairing locks, their voices desperate. We hold, we hold. But the storm only grew larger, the clouds splitting wide, something vast, shifting within shapes, without form, pressing against the surface, trying to rise. The captain watched, his chest hollow. Humanity had built a cage, but cages could not last forever. He shouted for the crew to focus, to help the machines in any way possible. But what could they do? Their weapons would only feed it their fire, only make it stronger still. He ordered the engineer to send power to the swarm, transmit energy through the ship's core, anything to strengthen their fight. The engineer obeyed. Rerouting reserves. The ship shuddered as its lifeblood poured into the void. Beams of light linking to the guardians below the swarm grew brighter, their fire hotter, their voices louder. We hold, we hold. But Reth laughed, a sound broken and wrong, his body rising without effort, his feet not touching the floor, his eyes blazing. Brighter than the lamps, he whispered with the voice of the dark. You cannot hold forever. We learn your strength. We learn your weapons. We learn your hearts. The prison is dust. Kell raised his weapon, fury in his eyes, but the captain blocked him, his heart torn. He shouted that Reth was still alive, still their own, but the words cracked in his throat, for he could see the truth. Reth's body shook his skin, splitting faint light spilling through the cracks, his voice layered with something inhuman. We will rise, we will spread, we will consume. The engineer cried out, alarms blaring as the storm below exploded, lightning ripping the sky, towers of shadow clawing upward. The swarm of machines fired in unison, burning the shapes back, driving them down. But each time the dark only grew thicker, stronger, its form shifting with every strike, claws, teeth, smoke, wings, fire. Nothing held it, nothing slowed it. We learn, we learn, we learn. The captain knew then that humanity's sacrifice had never been. To win it had only been to delay. They had given themselves to buy the galaxy time, and that time was ending. He shouted to his crew that they must leave, not to escape, but to carry the warning beyond this place, to tell the stars what was coming. To prepare for a war no one could win, but Kell shook his head, his voice fierce, saying if they fled, they would only carry the infection with them. The dark was already inside their ship, inside their crew, inside Reth. If they left, they would spread. It faster than the storm ever could. The captain's heart tore apart. He knew Kell was right, and yet he could not give the order to die. Not yet, the engineer screamed again, saying the power lines were burning the core, overheating, they could not hold. Much longer. The swarm of machines roared still. We hold. We hold, their bodies burning in the sky like falling stars, each one tearing itself apart to keep the prison sealed for one more heartbeat, one more breath. Reth rose higher, his body glowing, brighter cracks spreading across his skin, his voice a chorus. Now not one voice but many, the voices of the dark. We rise, we rise, we rise. The captain staggered back, his mind screaming, his hands shaking, yet he knew what had to be done. He ordered Kell to ready the weapons, not to fire on the storm, not to strike the dark below, but to strike their own ship, to burn it to ash before it carried the infection. Beyond, Kell froze, his eyes wide, but then slowly nodded his weapon, shifting the engineer, screamed, asking if there was no other way, but the captain's voice broke as he said, "This is the way the humans chose. This is the way we must choose too." They looked at Reth glowing in the air, his body a doorway for the hunger, and they knew the captain was right. But before Kell could fire, the ship lurched violently. The dark itself, striking from below, invisible claws raking across their hull. Alarms blared, the core screaming as it overloaded, flames ripping through the chambers. The captain was thrown against the wall, the crew falling around him, Reth floating in the center, glowing brighter than ever, his voice a roar. "We are free." The captain dragged himself to his feet, blood in his mouth, fire in his lungs. He staggered to the console, his fingers slamming against controls. He overrode safety after safety, his voice hoarse as he shouted to his crew, "We end it here. We burn like they burned." Kell stared at him in shock, but then nodded, his teeth clenched, the engineer sobbing, but obeying, rerouting the last of their power into the core. The ship trembled, the storm outside, raging, the swarm of machines, burning themselves alive in desperate fire. The captain closed his eyes and whispered to the memory of humanity, "We are not you, but we will try and—" He slammed his hand down the core, erupted light tearing through the ship flames, swallowing metal fire, ripping through the void. The scream of the dark echoing across every channel, every mind, then silence. The storm writhed below, shadows clawing against the fire. But the swarm poured their last strength into the blaze, thousands of years of waiting, ending in a single inferno. The planet burned, the prison sealed again, if only for a little longer, and in the ashes of their ship, drifting as fragments through the void, the captain's last thought clung to the stars. The survivor had been right. The humans had not been defeated. They had chosen to burn, and now he understood why. The ashes of the ship drifted like glowing dust. Across the dark sky, the silence after the storm, heavy and endless. The swarm of machines burned with their last light around the cursed planet, their bodies breaking apart one by one, their voices fading still. They repeated the same words, even as their frames crumbled. We hold, until they were nothing but fragments of metal falling into the storm below, and yet inside that silence, inside that endless void, something remained. One of the escape pods had torn free at the last moment, flung into the black by accident or by fate, its hull, cracked, its systems broken, but still intact inside. The captain stirred, his body weak, his mind a haze, his chest heavy with smoke. He coughed, dragging himself upright. His vision blurred. The others lay still around him, the engineer unconscious, Kell barely breathing, Reth nowhere to be seen. The captain blinked, forcing his mind to focus, his hands moving across the failing controls. The pod drifted powerless, but the emergency core flickered faint. Light struggling to hold on, he pulled the records from the ruined ship, the fragments of human data they had gathered before everything fell. His voice rasped as he whispered to himself, "They must know the truth. The galaxy must know what humanity had done." The pod spun slowly through the dark, its windows showing the planet below the storm, still raging, though smaller, now chained by fire. Once again lightning tearing across the surface. Shadows twisting, clawing, but unable to rise. The machines had given their existence to hold it back for one more age. The captain watched it with hollow eyes. He thought of the survivor in the ruin, his words, his broken plea, "You must not free it." And he knew the survivor had not been a coward. He had been a guard, the last in a line of guards that stretched back centuries. The pod trembled, another system failing. The engineer groaned, her eyes opening. She whispered, asking if they lived, if the dark was gone. The captain shook his head slowly, saying, "It was never gone. It only waits, it only learns." And she began to cry, soft and hopeless, but the captain silenced her voice gently, saying humanity had not cried, they had burned. He told her if they were to honor the lost humans, then they must not despair. They must tell their story. They must carry the truth. The pod's recorder flickered alive, the captain loading the files, images of humans standing proud in armor, their faces grim, their voices strong, fragments of speeches, logs of commanders, voices filled with steel. The crew leaned close, watching as history unfolded one Log showed humans building the colony, their hands scarred, their faces weary, their voices determined. They spoke of sacrifice. They spoke of holding the line. They spoke of knowing no one would thank them, no one would even remember them. Yet they built the walls anyway. They filled the caverns with fire. They set guardians above. And then they waited, one voice louder than the rest, a woman in command armor saying, "We do this not for glory, not for victory, but because we are the wall. If the wall falls, the stars fall," and the crew felt their hearts burn at her words. Another log flickered, showing humans fighting in the storm, shadows breaking through machines, burning fire, ripping through streets, men and women screaming, yet still holding. Rifles still pressing forward, even as the ground split beneath them. One soldier recording with his last breath, saying, "If anyone finds this, know that we did not run, we did not hide. We fought until the end, and if the darkness still whispers, then burn us, burn everything, for we would rather be ash than slaves." The captain's hands shook as he played each fragment. Voices of men, women, children, even children, some crying, some laughing. Even as the world fell, their colony had been no home. It had been a torch passed from one generation to the next, each knowing they would die, but each choosing to stand anyway. Kell stirred his eyes, opening his voice low as he listened. He said humans had not been conquered, they had not been erased. They had chosen their death, chosen their silence, and in that choice they had shown more strength than any empire the galaxy had ever seen. The engineer nodded, tears running her face. She whispered, "They were alone, and yet they fought for everyone. Else they fought for us even though we were not there." The pod shuddered again, its power bleeding out, alarms flashing, but the captain ignored them. His eyes locked on the final recording. One last log hidden deep in the files, a commander's voice. Heavy and tired, the face of a man lined with scars. He sat alone in a chamber fire, burning behind him, his eyes steady as he spoke. "If you hear this, then we are gone. We are the last wardens. The chains will break one day. You will think you have found ruins. You will think we failed. But remember, we did not fail. We held. We burned. We gave you time, and time is life when it comes for you. When the whisper calls, remember our choice. Remember that humanity did not bow. We did not surrender. We chose." The fire, the log ended, silence flooding the pod. The crew sat in stillness, their hearts beating hard, their minds heavy. The engineer whispered that she could still hear the whisper faint in her bones. The dark had not been destroyed. It had been pushed. Back only waiting. Kell gritted his teeth, saying the humans had passed the torch and now it was their turn. The captain looked at them both. His body weak, his mind breaking, but his voice strong. He said then, "We will not run. We will not hide. We will carry their truth. We will tell the stars. And if the stars do not listen, we will burn as they burned." The pod drifted on, powerless, the planet shrinking behind them, the storm still raging but caged once more, shadows waiting for the day. The lock would fail. The crew held the recorder close, their last gift, their last weapon, the truth of humanity. But even in the silence, even in the drifting void, a sound stirred, faint, soft, the whisper again, not in the air, not in the walls, but in their thoughts. Gentle, patient, repeating the same word over and over. "Learn, learn, learn." The captain's hands clenched, his teeth grinding. He shouted into the darkness, "We will not bow. We will not serve. We will burn before we let you rise." The whisper faded, but not. Gone, never gone. The crew sat in the cold, holding to the truth they had seen, and though fear crushed their chests, though despair pulled at their bones, they remembered the faces of humanity, the voices that had chosen to stand against the dark, and in that memory they found strength. The pod's beacon flickered, sending out a broken signal across the void. Not a cry for help, not a plea for rescue, but a message carrying the fragments of human sacrifice, carrying their story, their fire into the endless night. and as the pod drifted further into the stars, the captain whispered one last vow to the ghosts of humanity. "You were the wall now. We will try to be the same." The storm behind raged, the whispers ahead waited. The galaxy spun unaware, but the truth was loose again. The truth that somewhere beyond the silence, the dark was learning, and one day it would rise. The pod drifted for weeks through the dark, no stars close, no ships near, only the endless black and the faint pulse of its broken beacon. The crew grew weaker, their food almost gone, their water thin, their bodies pale, but none of them stopped sending. The signal again and again, the fragments of human voices, the logs of sacrifice, the words of fire, the warning of the darkness every hour, the same message repeated into the void, carrying across the stars. The captain sat with his back against a cracked hull, his eyes heavy, his breath shallow, yet he still checked the beacon again and again, his voice soft as he whispered, "We will hold. We will tell them even if no one hears. We will not let them be forgotten." The engineer sat near the recorder, her hands trembling, her face gaunt. She whispered that sometimes, when she closed her eyes, she could see the humans. She could hear them walking in the storm, rifles raised, torches burning. She could feel their fire inside her chest, even when her heart was cold. Kel grew restless, his strength fading, yet his spirit fierce. He would rise even when his legs shook. Pacing the narrow cabin, his hand resting on his blade, he muttered again and again that the dark was still listening. He could feel it in his bones, scratching at the edge of his thoughts, waiting for the right moment. He swore he would never let it take him. He swore he would fight until his last breath, one cycle. The beacon stuttered, almost failing, then suddenly grew stronger. A spark in the darkness. The engineer cried out, her weak hands pointing at the console. The signal was no longer alone. It had been received somewhere across the void. Another pulse returned, not a human voice, not a machine whisper, but something alive. Another ship somewhere out there listening. The crew leaned forward, their eyes wide, their hearts beating fast, hope burning for the first time since the fall of their ship. The signal came again, broken, static, then words, a language not their own, but they understood enough coordinates, a promise a ship was coming. The captain closed his eyes, relief washing over him, though he feared it was too late, his body too weak, his crew too frail. But the message burned inside him, stronger than hunger, stronger than thirst. Humanity's truth must live. Hours turned to days, the pod drifting, the whisper, sometimes returning soft, almost kind. It said, "We know you now. We know your fire. We will take it when the walls break. We will rise. We will learn your fear, your rage, your hope, and turn it into our strength." The crew tried to shut it out, tried to cling to the human words. Instead, contain, burn, hold. The captain repeated them like prayers. At last, the rescue came, a ship breaking the darkness, vast, and silver engines glowing blue. Its hull scarred by old wars, yet strong. Still, it drew close, locking onto the pod. The crew, weak and broken, were pulled aboard, carried into light, voices shouting, hands pulling them from the wreck. The captain gasped, air filled with the scent of life. His eyes blurred as he whispered, "Save the logs, save the truth." The new ship's crew stared in confusion at the fragments of human records, their faces pale as they watched the flames, the screams, the sacrifices. They had never seen such fury, such will in a people long thought extinct. One officer asked if it was real, if humans truly had done this. The captain nodded, his eyes fierce, though his body weak. He said, "Yes, and you must carry it now, because the dark will rise, and if you do not know the truth, you will fall blind." The new ship's commander listened, his face grim. He said the stories of humanity had always been mixed. Some called them monsters, some called them saviors, but no one knew where. They had gone now, at last. The truth was in his hands. He turned to his crew and said it must be shared across the stars. Every world, every fleet, every empire must know that the wall was not eternal, that the fire had burned itself to ash, and that one day the shadow would come again. The survivors rested, but their sleep was filled with whispers, visions of the storm claws tearing fire-rising humans shouting, "We are the wall." Their dreams shook them awake again and again. The engineer wept. Kell slammed his fists into the walls, swearing to fight. The captain stared into space, his mind heavy with one thought: humanity had passed the torch, and now it was their turn. The new ship left the cursed system behind, but the storm still raged on the planet, its voice muffled by ash but not silent, never silent. Deep in the fire, something shifted, a shadow twisting, learning, waiting. When the humans burned, they had bound it for centuries, but now their fire was gone, their wall was dust, and the cracks were already beginning to spread. The survivors told their story again and again across the journey, their voices weak but strong with conviction. The commander recorded it all. The logs, the whispers, the faces of the dead. He swore to send it to every system, to every council, to every ruler, until no one could ignore the warning. But even as the message spread, even as voices whispered of the return of humanity's fire, there were others who did not believe. Some laughed, saying humans were reckless and foolish. Some scorned, saying they were liars seeking power. Others feared, saying if the dark was true, then no wall could hold it forever. The galaxy stirred uneasily, whispers spreading faster than truth. One night aboard the new ship, the whisper returned stronger than before. It filled the halls, the walls, the air. It spoke not to one, but to all. Your walls will break your fire, will feed us, your blood will become our strength. We learn, we learn, we learn. The crew panicked, alarms blared, but the survivors sat still, their eyes burning. They had heard it too many times to fear it. They only clenched their fists tighter. The captain whispering back, "We will not bow." The whisper laughed, soft, terrible, and faded again, leaving silence heavy across the ship. The new commander stared at the survivors, his face pale, and he asked if it was always like this, if the dark would never stop. The captain answered with steady voice, "It will never stop, but neither did humanity, and neither will we." The ship pressed on, carrying the survivors, and the message carrying the fire of a dead people into the living stars. The galaxy would soon know the truth, and though many would deny it, though many would run, some would listen, some would prepare, some would rise. And when the day came, when the storm broke free again, there would be defenders not human, but carrying the same fire, the same choice to burn rather than bow. The captain sat in silence, staring at the stars, his body frail, his breath thin, but his eyes alive. He whispered to himself, "To the ghosts of humanity, you were the wall now. We will be the wall. And though the darkness may rise, though it may learn, though it may whisper forever, it will never take that choice from us. We will fight. We will burn." The stars stretched endless before them. The storm raged endless behind them. The whisper echoed endless within them. But the fire of humanity had been passed, the torch carried again, and in that fire was hope. Hope that one day, when the darkness came, the wall would still stand.